This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome, everyone, to a Tuesday edition of BYP with Q. I'm your host, as always, Rich Quinones. Super Bowl right around the corner. Do not forget to check us out on social media at Rich Q on Q, hashtag BYP. Kind enough to join us is our guy, Glenn Erby, managing editor, and does a fantastic job with the Eagles Wire, at the Eagles Wire, at the cover to NFL. All right, my friend, we are a couple of days away from, as we like to say, the big game, so we don't get in trouble with the National Football League, the Super Bowl. Listen, I just think right now, early on in this game, you start to look at this line. You're looking at a healthy Eagle squad that's kind of clicking on all cylinders. You're looking at a Kansas City Chiefs squad that seems to be a little banged up. It's been weird. I don't know if it's just kind of the quiet before the storm, but I feel as though there's not a ton of buzz with this game. It's almost like this foregone conclusion. People think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to go in there in Arizona and wax Kansas City.
No, I think it's a little bit of that. And I think because of the Andy Reid, the Patrick Mahomes, no one has really said anything crazy yet. So there's no bad blood. There's no venom. There's nothing to, to really get the juices flowing, like say last year or things like that. So I think as the week goes along, someone's going to make a statement, someone's going to get offended, someone's going to get antsy, and we'll have all the drama and theatrics that we need, for a great Sunday.
Listen, some of the questions already are just absolutely foolish. I mean, but you're going to get that all the time. It's utterly ridiculous. And I think the game within the game, I've said it for a week plus, I've said it for the last month with the Philadelphia Eagles, whoever they were going to play in the playoffs and then ultimately in the Super Bowl, their defensive line is playing at such a high level right now that they are basically winning the battle in the trenches. And you can say that about the offensive line. When you look at this matchup on paper right now, the X factor, is it the line play right now, that Eagles defensive front against that Kansas City offensive line, or is it the Eagles offensive line against Kansas City's front?
I think it's the Eagles defensive front. I think the Eagles offensive line is going to be stout. They're going to be sturdy. They're going to open up holes. But I think when you start talking about Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, a litany of weapons, some of those weapons are banged up. I think, being able to sustain a solid pass rush, being able to get pressure on Mahomes without having to bring more than 3 or 4 people is crucial to a victory on Sunday. So I think most of the pressure is on the Eagles pass rush for them to do the things that they normally do, not get caught up, not get gashed in the run games, and put pressure on one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and that quarterback, you get him moving around. He's a little compromised. I think ultimately, when you look at the numbers inside the game, the loss of Tyreek Hill, you're talking about 30% of that offense, right, was geared towards him. And then commercially, you look at the balance attack of the Philadelphia Eagles, they are scoring right around 67% inside the red zone, and Kansas City's given up about 60% when you talk about points, completion percentage, touchdowns, and field goals as well. So you magnify the loss of Hill. You have a compromised, not 100% Patrick Mahomes. You got that Eagles pass rush. And then you have their offense that really does a good job inside the red zone. So if I were to ask you the path of victory for the Eagles first, what would it be?
I think to establish some type of dominance, some type of efficiency, some type of flow on offense. I mean, whatever they do on defense, it usually stems from those guys accruing the lead, amassing the lead, 14-0, 21-0, 21-7, so on. So from that standpoint, you're not necessarily worried about the Chiefs or anybody else's running offense. You're just pinning your ears back and you're rushing the passer. So I think from an offensive run pass, situation, from an offensive flow, it'll be on the Eagles to get established early, get a lead. And at that point, you can take whatever running game the Chiefs have away from them and pin your ears back and go after Mahomes properly.
Yeah, and I think Hassan Reddick, he's showing you that he is a game breaker. And you think about that outside with Bradbury and Slay, and everyone thinks, oh, the Giants made a mistake. It was a money thing. They just didn't have a trade partner for Bradbury. That's just a fact. But you look at some of these wideouts now for Kansas City, whether it's going to be Tony or Scantling, they're also depleted in that area. I think they're going to try to force feed the ball across the middle to Kelce. So for a fact, if he's going to have a spy on him, a linebacker, or if they double him, that's going to open up for Pacheco. And that's the kid that I think if Kansas City is going to win this game on offense, we know Kelce, we know Mahomes, but I think this kid Pacheco's got to get his 18 to 22 touches in this game.
I think if that happens, then at that point the Eagles could find themselves in a situation. I mean, you don't necessarily on Pacheco or McKinnon running loose, taking swing passes or anything like that. But if he's able to get 20, 22 carries, and at that point the Chiefs have the dominated time of possession, they've gotten the Eagles off the field. They're doing a run first approach to the offense. And at that point, things could get scary. So I think that's a great point. And I think if Pacheco has the type of game that you're talking about, then things could get tight in the second half. And the Eagles aren't necessarily doing the things that they need to do on offense.
When you look at this Eagles team and where they've come from, even prior to the Super Bowl win a couple of years ago against New England, which was Nick Foles, we know, was the catalyst in that. Carson Wentz had a really good year before he got injured on the road against the Rams. You keep going back to when Jeffrey Lurie purchased his team. And I'm hearing a lot of people this week try to make the narrative or the comparisons or the parallel. Well, if it wasn't for Andy Reid, they wouldn't be in this spot. I think that's nonsense. You give Andy Reid his just due, but Andy Reid had a lot of issues with clock management, had a lot of issues with timeouts, and they never were able to get over the hump with Andy Reid, even though they had some great runs with those McNabb and Westbrook types of teams. And I think he brought stability, credibility back to the franchise. But I feel as though, if anything, you got to look at Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. And Howie Roseman, the much maligned Howie Roseman, who a couple of years ago with the whole Chip Kelly debacle, we were saying, stick him in the corner, let him sit at the small kids table, and look how far he's come. So are you buying into this Andy Reid built what we're seeing right now with the Philadelphia Eagles? Or is it, let's give him credit, but the credit really lies with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and others?
No, I agree. I think the others. I think if you're going to give Andy Reid credit, then you're going to give Joe Banner credit as well. And I think that's what helped set the standard. So you already had a good front office with Banner, then you had a solid coach. And then I think you have a situation where Howie Roseman came up under Banner. So that trickle down impact from running the front office, being a solid GM is there. So I think everyone gets a hand in it. Andy Reid helps set a culture on the field. Banner helps set a culture in the front office, and it's just trickled down to two or three different coaches. But Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie are still the key sticking points in terms of how they build the front office and how they've decided to build a roster. So I think you're correct in all of those things.
Couple minutes with Glenn Erby, does a great job, managing editor at the Eagles Wire. Follow them on Twitter at the Eagles Wire and at the THA cover UNFL. All right, couple more before I let you get out of here. Jalen Hurts. Listen, I think it's great that he's so locked in and zoned, and maybe that's just who he is, his demeanor. The kid can smile once in a while, like enjoy the moment, right? Enjoy the moment, the gravity of the situation, because it might not come again, right? Everyone thought Marino, second year, here we go. They lose 38-16 to the 49ers in 85. He never sniffed a Super Bowl again. Is that just who Hurts is? He's just a laser-focused young man where when it's time to play, it's time to play. But when it's time to be business-like, I'm all about business.
I think so. I think, you get that. I think you get parts of his dad. His dad's a coach. So you get the coach in him. So, when there's other teammates, playing around or doing different things, he's on to the next play. He's trying to be 5 plays ahead. He's trying to, to focus on the next drive. So I think you see a guy that has fun. He does his dances. He does other things. But you also seen a guy that, while at Alabama and other places, was cast aside. Yeah. So he approaches life as a quarterback with somewhat of a calm chip on his shoulder. So he's never going to get too high. He's never going to get too low. As he calls it, he's not interested in eating a rat poison. So he's all about, giving you his cliche answers. He's not worried about, sparking any interest or any hot takes or anything like that. You're going to get your answer, but you also know you're going to get a guy that's level-headed, that approaches the game in a calm demeanor, and his teammates appreciate that about him.
How much do you think the storyline where we have the first 2 African-American quarterbacks, opposing quarterbacks, playing the Super Bowl, start in the Super Bowl against each other for the first time? Do you get the sense that both of these quarterbacks that weighs on them a little bit, or it's more of a humbling, about time type of experience? And hey, the opportunity's there. Let's just try to rise to the occasion.
I think that the second part, I think, it's a cool thing, but, black quarterbacks have been successful for a while now. So it's not, it's historical, but it's not necessarily that earth shattering. You've had Lamar Jackson win MVP, you've had Michael Vick, you've had, Deshaun Watson got a fully guaranteed contract. So, barriers have been broken. I think they're both taking it in stride while still, Mahomes worrying about his image and his Q scoring, things like that. And Hurts just trying to win his first playoff game. So I think it's important, but both have other things that they're focused on.
Yeah, and you brought up a really interesting point too with Hurts, because it's not like he had to do a lot against the Giants, and he didn't play particularly well last year. Everyone's talking about Lurie's comments where we love this young man. He's a leader. He's talented. He works. We'll get into that contract when it presents himself. If he goes out and stinks up the joint and the Eagles lose by 17, he goes 18 of 36 for a $156 and 3 interceptions and a fumble, and they lose and he looks overwhelmed and overmatched. Is it going to really play into their decision whether they're going to lock him in long term or not?
No, I think they're going to do it regardless. I think if he goes out and he outplays Mahomes and he wins himself, a Super Bowl, an MVP, now you're talking about 40 to 50 million. Maybe you're talking about 5 years. I think if he goes out and he struggles and he kind of does what he did against the Bucks last year, then maybe you're talking about a 2 or 3 year deal, or maybe you're talking about them waiting until the end of next season. So I think a bad performance will cost himself some money, but I don't think he's necessarily in a position to cost himself his job or anything like that. I think we're talking about 20, 30 million. If he does what he's supposed to do, he could maybe help reset the market. If he doesn't, then you're probably looking at a 3-year, $90 to $100 million deal.
But the narrative, the thought, the perception now is that this kid's not a franchise quarterback. I mean, can we just kind of put that to the side now? I mean, I don't get, like, it doesn't bother me when people make lists on Twitter or when talking heads say certain people get so bent out of shape. They think it's a sign of everyone has their own opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but you're allowed to kind of, walk back your opinion a little bit or your thoughts. I mean, I'll tell you right now on the record on BYP at this moment, I didn't think he was going to be a great quarterback. I didn't think he was going to be a long-term solution, but he's won me over because he's a gamer. He's tough. He's a leader. He's got athletic ability. He's a smart quarterback, and he makes plays. These are the things I look for in a franchise quarterback, and he's just taken this team to the Super Bowl. So I don't get too bent out of shape with all that other stuff, but I do believe this narrative where this, you can't sit there and say Jalen Hurts is not a top 5, 6, 7 quarterback anymore in the league, regardless of what transpires on Sunday.
No, without a doubt, he's legit. He's a top 5, top 7 quarterback. Is he necessarily going to do it the way Justin Herbert or someone else does it? No, but he's going to do it his way. Joe Burrow doesn't necessarily do it the way Mahomes does it. Josh Allen either. So all these young quarterbacks, they do it differently. They're mobile. They're dual threats. But I think for Hurts, when you start talking about him as a great quarterback, you start to talk about leaderships, intangibles, different things like that. Moxie, his guts, his ability to run the ball. So all those things go into that big gumbo that we want in a quarterback. So he's not necessarily going to stand in the pocket and do it like a Peyton Manning or someone else. And he doesn't have to. He just needs to do what he needs to do. He needs to lead his team. He needs to chalk up victories.
We talked about Pacheco, Kansas City side, and kind of went into matchups. Give me a player that you believe has to step up and have a big game Sunday for the Eagles to win, other than Jalen Hurts.
Dallas Goedert. I mean, I think, the two outside guys to get attention. I think, Miles Sanders will get his attention. I think if the Eagles can't work the middle of the field, if they can't get their tight end involved, and things start to get tight, things start to get compressed, and it can become the type of game that we don't necessarily want to see. So I think from an activity standpoint, I think from an efficiency standpoint, you want to see Dallas Goedert get involved early and often, just like the Chiefs do with Kelsey.
Yeah. You leaning towards the Eagles in this game. I know it's earlier in the week. I don't think the line's going to move. I don't like the matchup, man. This game to me reeks of what Tampa Bay did to Kansas City a couple of years ago.
I said 37-31 to someone earlier in the week, and I'm okay with sticking with that. I don't think either team is going to stop either team from scoring. I think the Eagles have they have more on offense. I think they're a bit healthier on offense, and they have a little bit more on defense. So I don't think either defense will play lights out, but I think the Eagles will make enough plays in the end.
So that means if you were a betting man, you would play the over.
For sure. I can't see this one being, I think, there'll be points scored both halves.
Yeah, it's not going to be 17-14. Just give me an entertaining game. Just give me an
Correct.
exciting game. I mean, I think ultimately the two best teams are representing their conferences respectively, and you got playmakers on both sides of the ball. I just think that defensive line of the Eagles, man, they start to get to Mahomes and he's compromised, and that offensive line starts leaking a little oil. Man, I can see Reddick getting a couple sacks. I can see maybe a pick here and there, from the corners, these guys making some big time plays. And it before I let you get out of here, and lastly, I'll let you have the last thought, opinion, take on this. This goes to show you, this is why sometimes you just have to trust that owners and GMs know what they're doing when it comes to drafting players. Because a couple of years ago, the whole crap was, I can't believe they drafted a quarterback. Carson Wentz is the guy. What's Carson Wentz? He's going to be a career backup now. Like, this is why sometimes you got to step back. Don't play armchair quarterback and just have trust that the franchise knows what they're doing.
I think so. I think the only mistake Howie Roseman made was trying to convince us that you got this guy who was going to be this 12 or 13-year backup, like an athletic Ryan Fitzpatrick. But other than that, you upgrade the position. You've seen, I think, three or four times prior to that when they went to the playoffs or different things like that, a backup quarterback started. So when he finally got a chance to start his first playoff game, he got knocked out of the game. So from the standpoint of having a franchise quarterback, but wanting to get someone behind him that you could have there for the next 5 or 7 years while developing, that wasn't wrong. I think the idea was that this glorified Ryan Fitzpatrick or dual threat quarterback, that wasn't the case. And then you got a guy who can galvanize the locker room, and the guy in front of him didn't have that ability. So it caused friction and things of that nature. But looking back on it, how he did what he needed to do. And I'm not sure, I think he could have got the safety from the Panthers, Jeremy Chin, and someone else. So when you talk about who they might have picked with that pick, I don't think they're necessarily sitting here in that game if they take a defensive back or someone else with that pick in the second round.
Excellent stuff. Give Glenn a follow on Twitter, managing editor, Eagles Wire, USA Today, also a member, PFWA writers at the Cover 2 NFL. He's always kind enough to join us on BYP. All right, my friend, enjoy the game. Don't pass out by halftime. And, sometimes people have a little hot toddy here and there, and then they pass out during halftime. They missed the second half. It's been a rare occasion, but I know people that have done that.
I'm just trying to get through the week. It's going to be a long week. It's going to be a long Sunday. So at this point, I'm just trying to be.
Well, you're crushing it, man. Your insight is awesome. You're a great follow on Twitter. You guys put out great content, and I appreciate you making a couple minutes to join me on a Tuesday edition of BYP.
You know how we do, Rich, always. Thanks.
That's right, brother. All right, man. Enjoy the game, Glenn. Thank you, pal.
Appreciate you.
You got it.